Yes, so over to you, Sarah.
Okay. So could you flip me through one more? Next slide.
Yeah.
And then the next slide again.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks. So I'll just quickly introduce IWC Schaffhausen. We're a luxury Swiss watch company. This is our headquarters here in Schaffhausen. We were founded in 1868. Next slide. Could we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thanks. And this is our founder, Florentine Ariosto Jones. And he was an American watchmaker from Boston. Next. Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
Thanks. He traveled from the US to Switzerland to set up a company that would combine the American style of watch production with the craftsmanship of Swiss work. And this is then the International Watch Company Schaffhausen, or IWC Schaffhausen, as we're known today. We're known for our 6 watch families. And this slide shows the kind of the vintage version of those families. So clockwise from the top, we've got the Aquatimer, the Engineer, the Portuguesa, the Da Vinci. At the top left there, there's a pilot's watch. And then in the center is the Portofino. Next slide. Thanks. So what's consistently been important to our company is to keep the values and the spirit of adventure that brought Florentine Ariosto Jones across the ocean to Switzerland. And that's innovation and an appreciation of engineering excellence. And these have shaped the way we've developed our watches over the years. So we've developed new techniques and new materials. We were early users of ceramic and of titanium, and then we created ceratanium, which combines the best features of both ceramic and titanium. And the watch here, the black watch on the left, is made of ceratanium. Next slide. And in the area of sustainability, we've also tried to keep that pioneering spirit. So we were the first watchmaker to publish a sustainability report to GRI standards, the Global Reporting Initiative standards, in 2018. And there we set out 8 targets to be achieved by 2020. And this was a big step. So to offer the kind of transparency that we have in the report, where we talk about the materials we use and even how much of each material, was a little bit controversial among our peers, and it was really a first for our industry. And this report was the work of my predecessor at IWC, Aurelia Figuera, who put in place a really strong sustainability structure that I'm now able to build on. So I'm working on the next report, and I'm working with my colleagues to develop our new targets. Next slide. Thanks. So this involves really, well, key for us to be able to integrate sustainability into our day-to-day work is having a strong sustainability committee. And part of my role is to manage this committee. It's chaired by our Chief Marketing Officer, Franziska Gazal. And that's not because she leads marketing, but it's because she has a strong personal interest in sustainability. And our committee includes at least one executive committee member of the organization, so from every area of the company. They're representing the whole company. And these are our most senior managers. They report directly to our CEO. I also have extra committee members in there. I have supply chain is additionally represented. I have a colleague who's responsible for our sourcing of gold and diamonds. And I also have colleagues from the areas of innovation and communications. So in total, I have 10 sustainability committee members. Next slide. The sustainability committee meets quarterly, and then I also meet with committee members at least once a month, and then with some of their team members every 2 weeks. And we look at the progress towards our existing targets, the ones set out in the 2018 report. And we also look at what else we can work on in their areas. And then to fully integrate sustainability again, Franziska and I also meet with our CEO at least once a month. So we exchange views and ideas, we give updates, share opinions. And that means structures in place to really integrate sustainability into the day-to-day business, because we've got the key decision makers engaged. They're aware of the impact that their choices have. the choices that they may have, and they've got access to knowledge and best practices to help inform their decisions. Next slide. So there's an ongoing dialogue around sustainability, and this has been reflected in the way we've been setting our new sustainability targets. By keeping the committee members and their teams up to date on sustainability topics, I've been trying to give them the tools they need to develop targets that make sense for their areas. And in the one-to-one meetings with each committee member, we'll talk about the important trends and also what new opportunities there are. So that gives them the context for suggesting new targets. And then when we targets, I might suggest a few potential targets, but I also ask the committee members to talk with their teams and their colleagues to identify topics that could be highlighted in our next sustainability report. And by having those discussions and working through that process themselves, the committee members identify topics and they come up with potential targets that they really believe in, because there's that built-in sense of ownership. They've developed the targets themselves, they've had the freedom to be creative, and they haven't had the targets imposed on them from someone outside of their team. Can I see the next slide? Thanks. The next step after that has been alignment. So with the proposed targets already in mind, what we did on our last sustainability committee meeting was I asked the members to look at all the proposed targets together and make sure that they were comfortable that they all fit together so that each potential target was appropriate given the timings and the day-to-day business of the other areas of the company too. So just in practical terms, to organize that discussion, I grouped the sort of less controversial targets together first, just called them targets for approval, asked the committee to approve them, to think about the timeline and the ownership of the target. Most targets we try to have one owner, sometimes there needs to be two, but the ownership needs to be clear. Then for other targets, I grouped them into targets for discussion and we spent more time looking at them. And then there were still other topics where really I just asked the committee, did they want me to keep looking further into these topics and see if within them there might be a measurable target that we could develop. So that was really the basic process. And then key in aligning was making sure that each committee member had a view of how their targets fit together with those of the others and with the work of all different parts of the company. Next slide. The next step is going to be we'll shorten or we'll streamline the list of targets. We don't want to have so many that it becomes difficult to communicate. And here I have kind of a checklist of, this is what I'd recommend as a way to develop targets. I'm really fortunate because I have so many senior leaders in my sustainability committee. It means that when there's differing opinions about if a target is achievable or if it's something that we want to communicate, those different opinions get addressed and worked out very early in the target setting process. We've also had conversations such as, is a proposed target really ambitious enough? So would achieving it be something groundbreaking? Or in contrast, is a target maybe too ambitious, given everything that we're doing, so just all the day-to-day different concerns of the business? And then we also look at, is a target actually easy to communicate, or is it something that's going to require so much kind of backstory and explanation that maybe it's better just to do the work, but have something else be the focus of what we put forward as the target. Next slide. So yeah, developing that point out further of not being constrained by targets. In the meetings I've been having with my colleagues, I've been careful to sort of not give the understanding that the targets are our entire sustainability program. There's more that we can do, there's more that we will do, but not all the work we can do is easily measured or easy to put a timeline on or easy to communicate. And that's what we're looking for when it comes to the targets. But we will still do work beyond what the targets will set out. And one example of that is we've recently really been picking up our work around plastics. So we've been trying to eliminate fossil fuel-based single-use plastics. This wasn't anticipated or set out in our 2018 sustainability report, but it's something the committee has been really keen to take on. And when the new opportunity came up last year, when the Ellen MacArthur Foundation developed the New Plastics Economy Global Commitment, we took the opportunity to sign on to that commitment and learn more about alternatives in this area. And in a way, I would add this as something to include in the checklist as well, is developing out the targets, look at the points in the checklist, but also think of the targets as an enabler and not a constraint. There's something that you can structure and communicate your work around, but they shouldn't limit what you do. Next slide. This is, I'm going to give you an example of a background to setting a sustainability target. We wanted to reduce the size of our packaging. So it was too big, there was too much plastic. We knew that reducing the packaging would have a beneficial impact in terms of reduced emissions from shipping and from logistics. But this wasn't really primarily a sustainability initiative. It was an example of sustainability being integrated into an initiative around packaging that my colleagues were working on, designing the packaging actually with customers first in mind. So these different customer profiles were developed out. The customers as travelers, as gift givers, and as collectors. And that was the sort of the key point, but with an awareness of how important sustainability is as well. Next slide. So with those three profiles in mind, my colleagues developed a new high quality packaging based around the watch pouch, which is the little black box that you can see on the left with the watch in. And this pouch fits into the slightly larger box, the white one, but it can also, it's got kind of a cover as well. The little black pouch by itself can be used as an entire watch box by itself, especially for someone who's traveling. And then if you wanted to give a bigger box as a gift, bigger than the little white box on the far left, the black pouch also fits into the bigger box, kind of in the middle of the picture. So the watch can be given in this really nice gift box. And then for collectors, you can actually fit up to 4 of the little black watch pouches into that same gift box. So someone who has a few watches already or who's anticipating developing a collection could maybe prefer to go with that collection box kind of setup. So we feel like we've really met customer needs through this new design, but we also have about 90% less plastic used annually in making these new boxes. And we have a very high percentage of plastic from recycled materials. So this improves our environmental impact. And it really shows how you can integrate sustainability into your day-to-day business. This was also suitable to have as an actual target because it was something that was fairly quantifiable, easy to measure. Next slide. Okay, this should now be the poll. So I'm hoping to find out what you maybe already know about our current sustainability targets. Okay, it's interesting. It's good that people know that we have targets. Shows that we could do more communication on it too, though. So that's really interesting. Thank you for your answers. So these are our current sustainability targets, what we would like to achieve by 2020, using 2017 as the baseline for measurement. So you can see how they're all measurable, they're all quantifiable. Any targets that we don't achieve will be included in the next round of targets, so in the next report, as something we'll keep trying to meet in the future. The 2020 sustainability report will include a description of how we progress towards each of these targets. Obviously, it will also set out our new targets, and we'll talk about the work that we've done outside of the targets. So other areas that are important but aren't captured by a target. Next slide. This is how we communicate our sustainability work, generally grouping into these 4 areas. And then we also have 3 themes that go across each of the areas. And the themes are governance and ethics, innovation, and communications and engagement. And what we haven't really done yet is communicate on an ongoing basis how we're doing in our progress towards our targets. So that's an ambition we have for the future. We'd maybe even like to have something online on iwc.com, like a progress bar or a chart, where you can see that for each of the targets, how far along are we, and then some text as well explaining what steps are being taken at that point in time. Next slide. So we don't know for sure yet if one or more of our 2020 targets might be missed, and of course we really hope that won't happen. But if it were to happen, what we'd want to be able to do is clearly show where we started, how far along we got, and where we think the obstacles were that might have slowed down our progress towards the target. And I think that it's key that if a target is missed, having a really open and honest communication about how that happened and what the next planned steps are is kind of key. So it's basically about transparency and how important that is for credibility. Next slide. Our targets and our reporting of our progress towards our targets and our other work, they're all part of the story that we want to tell the world about who we are. And we think it's important to show what's behind the scenes as well as kind of the beautiful face at the front. We would like people to know that, you know, our watches are made here in Schaffhausen, that we've carefully built our supply chain to aim for a positive social impact and to minimize any environmental impacts. And in a way, we're fortunate. A mechanical watch is a very sustainable product. It's designed to last forever. Our CEO has spoken about each mechanical watch having a heartbeat that's set by the watchmaker, and that if it's taken care of, it will keep ticking forever. And it's important to us that in future people will know more about how the watches are made. And they'll know that we want to try to make sure that everything that goes into the watch is as sustainable as the watch itself. So both the watches and the way we make them are adding value to society. Next slide. So we also use our targets as a focal point for the storytelling. We hold welcome days for new employees throughout the year, and I give an overview of our sustainability approach and of course of the 8 targets. And so an example is having the target to achieve responsible jury council code of practices recertification gives a starting point then for a conversation about the work that we do in the area of supply chain to manage our impacts and why this is important. And it can be quite an eye-opener. We find that people still sometimes think that a high-quality luxury product just won't have any problems in the supply chain, or problems will have automatically been taken care of, and that being a luxury brand means that, which would be great if it were true. But, you know, unfortunately, that isn't the case. There are still brands that make beautiful pieces that maybe the story behind them isn't quite so great. So we try and generate some pride among our employees to tell them that, you know, we've taken steps that go beyond kind of legal requirements, and we really want to manage our impacts. Next slide. This conversation took off internally a little bit last year. December last year, the World Wildlife Fund Switzerland published a report on the environmental impact of the Swiss watch and jewelry sector, and that report was highlighted on a popular Swiss TV show. And a lot of colleagues found that their friends and their families started talking about the environmental impact of the sector. So it generated a lot of awareness, for example, about the benefits of using recycled gold or of using renewable energy for the very energy intensive process of gold refining. And people, of course, my colleagues, they were pleased that IWC was ranked first. And a large part of the reason we were ranked first is because we'd really done a lot around transparency. So we'd set targets and we'd explained how we try to manage our impacts. And we know for sure there's more work we can do, and there's more work that we will do. But by having already set out and explained our approach, we think that we benefited from that. That's why we got this sort of positive ranking that then generated a lot of support and engagement. So with the conversation started, I had more colleagues than before coming up with suggestions of other steps we could take and other things we could do on a day-to-day basis to try and manage our impacts. And I found that really encouraging, that sustainability is really being embraced as something people see as relevant to their day-to-day lives. Next slide. So we're really proud to have been awarded the Positive Luxury Butterfly Mark. We've held the award since 2014. We display the award in each of our boutiques so that we can also engage customers on the topic of sustainability. And being able to say that we're a luxury brand to trust is really a great shorthand for how we like to be understood. And then having the 8 targets behind that to back this up makes communicating easy to structure. It makes the story of what we do easier to digest. I've also had sustainability committee members tell me that one advantage of the targets is just being able to set them and then mark the achievement of milestones is quite rewarding. And then it also gives us, again, opportunities to communicate. So some are even on an ongoing basis. So the target to reduce absence rates by promoting employee health and well-being initiatives, that's generated a lot of communication activities, because for each new initiative that comes up, our colleagues will communicate the purpose of that, as well as all the details of what it is that's available. Next slide. And then, yeah, lastly, really, our sustainability committee chair, she's found that the level of engagement around sustainability really took off after we set the targets and after we made that public commitment to reach them. So publishing our report to GRI standards and being able to show how we're working towards our targets generated a lot of momentum, and then getting awards and recognition for that work is kind of this positive reinforcement that helps sustain that momentum. So if anyone's debating whether or not to set targets, because it can be quite daunting to commit to public targets and deadlines, because there's always going to be factors involved that you can't entirely control that then maybe mean that you miss a deadline or a target. But despite that, I'd say it's definitely worth it. And especially if you can set the targets in a way that's engaging and empowering for the people who in the end will be responsible for meeting those targets. Next slide. There we go. So I hope some of this has been useful, and I thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. It was really interesting. So I will now open the Q&A box. I don't know if you can see it from your side. Tell me.
I can see your screen. It says I'm viewing your screen, but all I can see is...
Okay, we will do it like this. So can you see the first question?
No.
Oh. Okay. We have a few. So I will just read them to you and you can answer them live. The first question is, so first, thank you very much for the opportunity to learn with Sarah's knowledge. I would like to hear about your experience in tools to measure about employees' well-being and the field of material resources to build the watches.
Okay, so the tools to measure employee well-being, goodness. We'll be doing an employee survey later this year. I think there was one done a few years ago, but that was before the company. But I know that there's a lot of effort going into the survey. We also try and encourage feedback on an ongoing basis. So every time there's a story posted on the internet, we encourage people to add comments at the bottom of that story, or to just hit like if they're really in a hurry, it's kind of Facebook style. But it's really about ongoing dialogue. So, and then the second part of the question was about resources.
Yes, the field of material resources to build the watches.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's, I think for us, the area where the biggest risks are to us. Like we, really have to take care that we're working with responsible suppliers. What we've done there is we've relied quite a lot on the Responsible Jewelry Council certifications. So we make sure that all our suppliers are certified. And when suppliers haven't been certified, we've worked with them to encourage them to get that certification and to help them, where possible, kind of understand what that means and the benefits of it. So we're going to be doing our own recertification this year, now to the higher Code of Practices standard. So the Code of Practices got upgraded and re-released just recently, just in the second quarter of this year. And we're going to be trying to meet that higher standard, just to sort of, you know, show how important we think it is.
Okay, we have another one from Win Burke. Please comment on link between sustainability, wellness, and relate to talent recruiting and retention.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure there's a link there. It's my colleagues in HR who are working on the health and wellness initiatives. And yeah, we're really hoping, I think we talk about them as well on our LinkedIn page. So we're hoping that people will find that that makes us an attractive employer. So what we have is a committee representing different areas of the company, and the people on the committee come up with the initiatives. At first, anyone could join the committee, but it was massively oversubscribed. There was a huge amount of interest, which has been great. We have initiatives like we have free fresh fruit daily is available to us. There was a fitness day arranged with a local fitness center where people could sign up to try out different classes for free. Where possible now, we're trying to have more and more ergonomic workstations. So when the new manufacturing center was opened last year, all the workplaces there are ergonomic and can be adjusted for the employees. And we're just going to continue down that road with more and more initiatives. And yeah, hopefully it'll sort of reflect that in talent recruiting.
Perfect. Then we have a question. How did you set your carbon emission reduction target, and how do you measure it? With a tool?
Ah, okay. So a lot of our emissions work is organized for us by Richemont Group. We're part of one of the maisons of the bigger Richemont Group. And this really helps a lot. So the measurement, we can give, you know, our energy usage and that kind of thing. And then it's our colleagues at Richemont who will turn that into, using the tool, the emissions that we've generated. And then they'll tell us what our emissions were and ask us to contribute to offsetting those emissions. So I think the last target that was set, which was the 10% emissions reduction, was set with the energy agency. So in Switzerland, I think it's the ENAW. But it's a German name and I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically like a government energy agency that works with businesses to help them set targets for reduction. It's challenging for us because we run on renewable energy. So our headquarters and our manufacturing center run on renewable energy. So of course we can always find ways to reduce emissions, but I think that's one of the biggest steps to take, and that step has already been taken. But, you know, we'll find ways. We try and promote employee commuting by public transit. We also offer subsidies if people buy an electric vehicle, and we have charging stations here for electric vehicles as well. Where I think we can do more work maybe is around business travel, and then also in our boutiques in different countries as well. So we'll be looking at that in future.
Okay. Next question we have, what are, in your view, others companies in any industry that are at the forefront of sustainability and tracking this?
Oh my goodness. So this would be like my personal answer rather than, you know, me as a representative of IWC answering. I really admire what Stella McCartney's doing in her field. It feels like they never miss an opportunity to try out something new when it looks like it could really support sustainability. And I think that, you know, that for sure that kind of, they obviously have that pioneering spirit, you know, that's really admirable. So that would be the first one I think of.
Okay. We'll have another one which says, use of 3D additive manufacturing and material science to leverage sustainability.
Is that like 3D printing, or I'm not sure the question.
I'm not sure neither. Let's go to the other question. What is the best way to reduce CO2 footprint? Do you have any initiative that reduce the amount of flights or things that managers have to do? Or?
This has been a really big topic. I think a lot of our managers anyway are very aware of the impact of flying, also in terms of cost and time, but yeah, obviously environment as well. So they fly smart, you know, like nobody travels far just for one quick meeting and then flies back again. You know, if people fly, it's because they have to, and they pack in as much around it as they can. And they are really good about flying at the back of the plane. So a CEO flies economy, you know, he's not, you know, flying to get air miles or status or anything like that. And that's something that I think we could talk about more to show that we're aware of it. It's also something that I think it needs to be sort of a group-wide initiative a little bit as well, to manage expectations from the group around how quickly people based up here in Schaffhausen can get from A to B. And also we would like to see more investment in communications technologies that mean that people don't have to fly. And I think that will happen too.